try to get 300 pins made. I already have all the pins taken out and separated. Whoever does come and pick this up, don't drop it, otherwise you'll be here 3 days picking up the pieces. But anyway, we got 300 pen kits there, and we have, I want to give a good shout out to you guys that made the pen blanks for me, or for the club. You know, the 25 that you glued in, and we got the pens ready to go. The blanks, I should say, okay? So we got 300, actually 600 pieces of wood, or enough for 300 pens. So we'll turn until we get done. And so I figured this would be a good time to go through, and I don't want to say what we expect out of you, but you know, we're going to be turning pens for the troops. And when you turn pens for the troops, we make pens for 2 people, the VetsRoll and the troops. The troops' pens cannot be any thicker than this. They can't be ornate because they have to go in the sleeve of the uniforms, okay? Unlike the VetsRoll, you can decorate them any way you want. Doesn't make any difference, even if they're fatter, okay? That's no problem, but we can't have them any thicker than this. Preferably having just a little bit of a roundness to them. They can be flat and straight across, but there's not much wood left when you do go straight across. So leave a little bit of wood on there, but what you see here is the maximum thickness. Okay, so you can have just a little bit of a dome on them to make them pleasing to the eye, but that's really what we're talking about. Okay, I'm going to go through how to make a pen, and I'm going to turn a pen, but I turned this in quick this afternoon just to give you an idea of the size that would be good. I'm going to pass it around and look at the size of the pen. It's not flat across, it's not a fat pen. Slim lines are not conducive really to real fat pens. Bigger kits are better for that. But that's about the size that we want, okay? So when you first open up a pen kit, slim line, fun line, depending on what brand you get a brass tube. Most of you know that. Those of you that don't turn pens, there's a brass tube inside this block of wood. And it needs to be scratched up when you get it. Sometimes if you buy them, they're already scratched, but if they're not scratched, you take a sandpaper and you gotta sand it so that it's roughed up. What I have found in the past, if I put that brass tube on there, I can put 3 of them. I take the take the bushings, thank you. When you take the bushings off, you can put 3. You can put 3 tubes on here, and I put them on there, and then I take 120 grit sandpaper, turn it on, and you can rough them up really good. Makes them really handy. And a couple of years ago, when I was doing a lot of pens for the Turn-a-thon, I actually got a 1/4-inch rod. It was about that long. Well, it wasn't that long in this one. When I put it on my big lathe, and I had like 7 or 8 of them, slid them all on there, and spun the lathe, sanded them with 120, and it roughed them up. And you need to rough them up because once you drill the blank, it has to catch. Now, in the past, during the Turn-a-thon, we've had a problem. When you assemble these, the one gentleman, bless his soul, he's not with us anymore, but he pushed them in, and he said that, you know, they were really tight, so I didn't even glue them. Well, once you start turning and the glue lets go, all it's going to do is spin, and you can't do anything. So it's got to be glued up. Okay. I personally use medium thick super glue. Other people use epoxy. I don't know. What's some of the other things?
Brown Gorilla Glue.
What do you brown?
Yeah, it expands. So if there's any voids in
Is that what foams?
Yeah.
Polyurethane,
Yeah.
Gorilla Glue.
And then I just I wax both ends so that it doesn't.
There's a little
cut my
tip
end.
that I saw just the other day. You know how sometimes you you go to put the glue and stuff on it to get them in there, what they did is they had a dowel, and they took some plumber's putty and rolled it out on the table, and it was a real thin layer of plumber's putty, and he stuck those tubes in both ends, and that way when you push the tube into the block, it kept it clean.
Yeah, so I do with the wax. I just use beeswax, like candle making beeswax sheets. They're an 1/8 inch
Just
thick.
stick it in?
Just pop it up, and it comes, fills your
When I
center.
saw them using plumber's putty, they rolled it out flat and just stuck it in there, on each end, and that kept all the glue, so when
I have a
you
jig on my
reamed it,
sander
you
that squares the ends.
didn't get glue inside the tube. I thought that was really a neat idea. But anyway, make sure you rough them up good, and then I use medium thick, and I use a pair of needle nose pliers. Put the glue on the tube and put it in about halfway, move it in and out, turn it halfway over and push it in, and then I let it dry good. Prior to that, when you cut your blanks, you want to cut them almost exact, maybe a 1/16 oversize. Otherwise, you're trying to ream and square them off. There's a lot more work to it. So cut it about a 1/16 of an inch longer than what the blank needs to be. That way you can square them up and not have any problem. They make reamers that you put in your drill. You can ream it out, and essentially what you're doing is you're squaring off the end with the tube. Some people put it in their drill press at a vise and do that. If you have good square tubes, that works good, but if your tubes are not exactly square, that's not going to work so good. You can actually ream them by hand if you want. I put a glove on and just ream them by hand. It goes pretty quick. Lately, what I've been doing is I have a vise handy. I stick it in the vise and just take my electric drill and go in and I flatten them off that way. Other people use a round disc sander. They set it on the flat table and square them off until just the tube shines up a little bit. You know you got it square.
Jerry?
Yeah.
I use a device from the Arizona Silhouette, that you put tubes on, use your disc sander.
And it keeps it
and
square.
it's
I've
exactly
seen that.
square.
It's a little flat thing with a little arm that comes up with a tube, or 1/4 inch tube, and you slide it on there, and you can put it on your table and do it. Is that
I
what
made
you're
one
talking
for
about?
I made one for my disc sander. It's really simple.
Yeah, they're just anything that will square the wood to the brass tube without making it square. You think it's square, but it's not.
Yeah.
So when you go to turn, all of a sudden you go, well, that doesn't look right. Well, your wood was not squared to the tube. Okay, so you want to rough them up good and glue them. And I leave them set for a couple hours anyway before I turn them, or before I ream them, because sometimes you get in there and they get a little bit hot. That'll release that super glue. I don't know about other glue. It'll spin out on you. The other thing too is, I don't know how often this has happened to you. You get the tube part way in and you're moving the glue around, and now it gets stuck, and it's half of it's sticking out. Okay, what do?
I drill it back out.
No, best way to do it is cut it off, turn it around and stick it in the other end. Piece of cake, okay? I just take the bandsaw and cut it off and grab it with my needle nose pliers, put more glue on it and go into the other end. Who cares if there's a little gap in the center? Doesn't make any difference, okay? Especially on the slim lines, okay? You're only losing the bandsaw width of it anyway, okay? But rather than, because man, you can get in there, you bend them up, and then like you say, you gotta re-drill them, or you wasted a good piece of wood. Just cut it off, turn it around, and stick it in the other end. Then when you ream it, if you happen to get a little bit too short, use it for the top end of your pen. Leave the bottom end of your pen the correct, because that's where the mechanism works and ejects the ink. If one blank is shorter than the other one, always put that on the top. That's where the clip is at, okay? But you want to make sure that bottom is the right length so that you don't have to push your transmission in too far and ruin it, okay? Is that me?
No.
Or was it you? If you get it stuck halfway in, cut it off and stick it the other end. Yeah.
If you start running into that a lot, where they're starting to stick on you,
Yes.
probably because the inside of the wood's wet.
Either
If it's-
wet or you've drilled a hole but haven't cleaned it out.
Yeah.
Good enough. What I have been doing is, and I don't remember, Dick, do you remember what, is that it's not an O bit. You have lettered numbered drill bits. E?
Something.
Whatever it is, it's just a little bit, half a millimeter, whatever it is, bigger than the 7 millimeter, okay? The numbered bit is a little bit bigger, and I'll just take my blanks that I have not put the tubes in yet and take a drill and just go through all of them just to clean them out a little bit more, because there may be some trash in there or whatever, just to get it clean so that when you do put your tube in, it slides in nicely, okay? But you're right, you know, if you jack around, you get half a tube in there, you go, now what? Cut it off and stick it the other end, okay? So, once you get your tubes all done, or your blanks done, you do a couple things. First of all, if you have fancy wood and you're going to match the color grain, or match the grain, take a pencil or a marker and mark it so that you can keep track, so that when you put the pen together, you get the grain match. If it's tighter grained, if it's like walnut or something like that, and grain doesn't make any difference, it doesn't make any difference which end you use, okay? But if you want to make a grain match, mark it so when you put it on, say, okay, this is going to be the dip end, this is going to be the top of the pen, okay? Then when you put it together, you can actually turn it a little bit and match up the grain, okay? Especially spalded wood or you know, more exotic wood, if it's got a really pretty grain, line it up, because when you put the pen together, it looks really nice when it shows that little bit extra to make it look nice. Okay? So once you get your blocks ready, you've roughed the tubes, you drilled a hole in here, you glued it in, you squared them off. Now we're going to put them on the lathe. And these are called bushings. Thank you, Don. They're called bushings, and they are 7 millimeter for the fun line pens. And a bushing goes on, pen goes on, blank goes on, another bushing, and then another blank, and then another bushing, and then it comes up. Now there's a couple on your pen mandrels. Most of them come with a screw cap on the top that you actually put this screw, once you get it set up, you screw it on there and it gets it good and tight. That works good, but if you happen to tighten it up too much, pretty soon you're stripping threads or that kind of thing. These are called mandrel savers. And what it is nothing but a live center, and it's got a 7 millimeter hole here so that when it comes up, it goes right onto the 7 millimeter mandrel, thank you. So what it does is slides in there, and what you want to do is bring it up, tighten your tailstock, and give it just a little bit of a tension. If you're turning, and all of a sudden you think you're getting a catch, but it keeps spinning, tighten it up a little bit more so that it tightens up between the bushings. Once you get it tight between the bushings, you can turn it and do your thing with your tools. Now, I only have 2 tools when I do pens. I use roughing gouge and I use skew. It's the only thing I use. If you're going to do fancier stuff, a lot of times I have a small round nose scraper that I may put a little definition in it. You can use any tool you want, doesn't make any difference, but I find with a roughing gouge, if you have it sharp, that's as good as a skew or any other tool like a bowl gouge or, again, whatever you're happy with or that you like to use, go ahead and do that. But I find with a roughing gouge, and you have a sharp one, you can start with 220 to sand with. You can go nice and lightly, and it'll get the job done. But again, you can use any tool that you want, whatever you're comfortable with. There's a lot of times when I was given some lessons, when you're turning a pen, speed is your friend. And I mean speed, everything you get. You turn that sucker up, because if you only have it running, slow, this thing is pounding the corners, okay? And you don't get a very good cut, it just doesn't work very well. I think this goes up to 3,400. Crank that sucker all the way up. Big lathe, little lathe, whatever you use it. That way when you go to turn, you might get it tight. This is a point of interest too. When you're using a mandrel saver, that's exactly what it needs. You're putting pressure on this wood between the bushings, okay, and the brass tubes. You're putting pressure on that. If you use the screw, they're brass little screws that go on the end, and you tighten it up. Most of the time you got to use a pair of pliers to get it tight enough. What happens then is you have to bring up your tailstock with a 60-degree point to go in the end of it. And when you start cranking down like this, pretty soon your mandrel is not like this anymore, it's like this. And you never will get it round. You'll bend that mandrel every time. It'll bow on you. This mandrel saver pushes straight in. With the 60-degree point, what it does, it flexes that mandrel saver, and you'll ruin it in a second. So if you don't have a mandrel saver, this was, I don't know, get it out. I'm not one to spend a lot of money. This is an old bushing. Doing a lot of pens, you end up with a lot of bushings. I took an old bushing, I took the little point out of it, knocked it off from the back end, took that out, and I put a bushing in there, okay? And actually this is a 7mm, but it doesn't need to be, just enough that you can press into the hole. And I put it on my drill press and pressed it in. Instead of spending, what, $39 or $49 for a mandrel saver, they call it. You know, this was an old live center that I was not using, and I put an old bushing in there, and now I have a mandrel saver. Everybody hear what I did? And that works out really good. It doesn't bend the mandrel. See if we can turn this a little bit here. Speed is your friend. What I'm doing now is pretty much getting it around, getting it down the centerpiece here to the diameter that I want, and then I go to the corners. So I pretty much take it down to the diameter that I want. Then using the end of the roughing gouge, I'll go in there and I'll clean it up. And you don't push hard. Nice and easy. If you don't turn left-handed, try it. It'll take you a little bit of time to learn how to turn left-handed, but use both hands when you're turning. It makes it a lot easier. not just in pens, but everything. And what we try to do with making pens is, these bushings are 7 millimeters. These bushings here match the pens when we put them together. Gives it a nice smooth transition when you put the pens together. Real light last cut. How long did that take? A minute? 2 minutes maybe, the most? So when you sand, we're not going to probably have the liberty with at least Sherlock's 2 lathes. Is Bill's a variable speed?
I have no idea.
Okay. If it's not variable speed, you can still turn. I would suggest what we'll do is we'll check them out. We'll put the belts on like a fast medium speed, and you can sand at that higher speed rather than going down to like 200 or 300. Okay. Otherwise, you're changing belts all day long. But with the variable speed, I'll still leave it up. Move it up fairly high. Sherlock was, good old Sherlock. He had a whole bunch of sandpaper. He called me and says, "You want it?" And he told me about it. And it was big rolls of this size. So I took it home and I cut it. I stapled them together. And we have 120, 180, 220, 320, and 400, okay? And we'll have these at the Turn-a-thon. I made up a whole bunch of them. Use some fresh sandpaper. If the sandpaper gets old, tear it off of there and throw it away and get another piece, okay? The worst you can do is be a wood miser like Nick over here and use 10-year-old sandpaper. You know, you don't want to throw that sandpaper away until every corner is used up. You know, well, when you have good fresh sandpaper and your lathe is running, you can just wrap it like this. That's the 400. We're going to do the 120 to begin with. So I'm using 120 right now, just to get it rounded out. And on the 120, now you want to take and hand sand it with the grain. Okay? And you don't have to do it lightly. All you're doing is taking the scratch marks out of the 120. And with these Freedom pens, I only do this on the 120. I don't do it with the rest of them. You can do it with all of them. Each grit, I should say, but I don't. And you don't have to sand 20 minutes. If you get a good sand on the 120, you can move right along. You don't need to burn your sandpaper, burn the wood, use up your sandpaper, and just move right along. And get them sanded. You can see I still get sawdust with each grit, and I like to feel it because you can feel any imperfections or whatever. Just hit it lightly a little bit again, and you're good to go. And where's the 400? And you just do it lightly with the 400. You see, I'm not burning the sandpaper. I'm not burning it up. Okay? Yeah, I'm using it, but a lot of times what I'll do is just take it and slap the paper, and it gets rid of a lot of the sawdust down there, so that you can use it. Okay. So now this is sanded plenty smooth, because what I do is I use a sanding wax. Now I make my own. What's the name brand of that black? What is it?
Renaissance wax.
One more time?
Renaissance wax.
Well, Renaissance wax is more of a finishing wax. This is a sanding wax. It's in Yorkshire grit, you know.
Yorkshire grit.
And quick story about Yorkshire grit. I went to Louisville, Kentucky this year to the National Convention, and I'm sitting outside having a smoke in this, I don't want to be ungracious, but this undressed, sloppy looking guy is sitting at a picnic table with me. And we got to talking. He invented Yorkshire grit. I'm going, there he is, you know. And the company that makes all the carbide tools.
Easy Wood
Yeah,
Tools.
Easy Wood Tools just bought him out. He invented that because he had a wood allergy. And he wanted to be able to sand and finish wood without having sawdust. That's why he invented it. The first year, he and his wife cooked all this stuff up in his kitchen.
And he got an allergy to that.
No, no.
His wife killed him, we're dead.
So basically, what this is, and I make my own beeswax, and then once I put it in a crock pot and melt all that down, then I add rotten stone or pumice or whatever you want to call it. It's almost a powder, but it's like lava soap. You know how lava soap is gritty? This is a real finer grit, okay? And I put it in there and I mix it up good, and surprisingly, you got to use about 4 parts mineral oil to 1 part beeswax, otherwise it just stays hard. Yeah.
How do you keep your grit suspended while it's cooling down?
You have to stir it until it gets cool enough and it stays suspended. Good question. So I got it all in a crock pot, and I unplug it. After it's completely melted, add all this stuff in, and I'm stirring. And you're right, the rotten stone falls to the bottom, doesn't stay suspended until it starts to cool. You keep turning it until it's almost like butter. Okay. But what it is if you want to feel it after a bit here, just put a little on your finger, and you can't hardly feel it, but it's there, okay? It's a grit. And I put in, what do I do with it?
It's on the lathe.
Right up on top.
Thank you. I just cut a piece of green scratch pad, and this is how I apply it. I just take a little bit, and it just has a small amount on the pad. You don't need any more than that. And you can put it on by this way, or if you have a variable speed, turn it way down and put it on. And that works it in good. But what does this will take it up to about 1,000 grit, from 400 up to 1,000 just by doing this. So once you get it on there, and I'll have this available for us to use at the turn-a-thon. You take a paper towel then, turn the speed up, or as high as you got it there, and run it good. When you turn it, you see the wax coming off, and you buff it until there's no more wax and you have a clean paper towel. You're saying I'm taking kind of long. Well, no, I'm not, because I'm not going to 600, 800, up to 1,000 if you're going to, make a nice pen, shiny pen. That right there is plenty smooth to put a finish on it, okay? And I use this on my bowls. That's what's on my urn. I sanded 320 and put this sanding paste on it and waxed it up, and then I put a finish wax on top of it. But that's all that was, instead of using so much sandpaper and so much dust, okay? Now that we have the sanding wax done, I made my own wax also, finishing wax. And what this is, it's nothing but paste wax that you buy for furniture, round Minwax or Bryn wax or whatever. I take it out, put it in the pot, and add about 2/3 mineral oil to that paste wax, because that paste wax is pretty hard, okay? And this way, this is kind of soft also, okay? And the reason I do that is because it's got a little bit more mineral oil in it, but when I first did this, I made just beeswax. But then I started using the Brin wax and the Min wax because it's got carnauba wax in it, which is a harder wax, okay? So all I do then is I take this little applicator pad, turn on, and run across the bottom. And you don't have to push hard because we're not sanding. All we're doing is adding wax to it, and then we want to buff it.
You're not heating it up, Terry?
No, don't need to. This is wax, okay? If you had a harder wax or like a stick of carnauba wax, or what Sherlock does, you know, I got to give him credit for this. He takes a can of Brin wax or Min wax, and he opens up the lid and he lets it set for a year. And what that does is it dries all the moisture out of it, and now he's got a hard block of wax, and that's what he uses. Okay? Now, I really believe he doesn't put anything away, so he leaves the lid off, but it actually worked for him. Okay? Yeah, right. So, but anyway, that actually works pretty darn good because once it dries out, it shrinks in from the can, you just dump it out, and it's a good hard stick of wax. Okay? Min wax and Brin wax has carnauba in it, but I have tried taking in my mixture to melt carnauba wax. The only thing you can melt carnauba wax is with a torch. And I tell you what, and then it doesn't mix very well. So taking out of the can like that, thinning it down with some mineral spirit and mineral oil, and mineral oil is kind of expensive. You go to the store and buy it because it's for babies and whatever. Here I am again, cheap. I go to Farm and Fleet and buy it by the gallon that they give to animals. It's food safe. It's mineral oil. That's what it is for animals. It's the same thing as if you go to buy a little 8 ounces of mineral oil in the grocery store for $8. You buy a gallon for 12 or 14 bucks. Okay, but when you go to melt wax or thin wax, it takes at least 2/3 oil to 1/3 wax to get it soft enough so that you can use it. Okay, so now that we've got this buffed,
You want to share your recipes with the group at Turn-a-thon?
what's that?
Will you bring in the recipes for this?
I may not give you the recipe is, I could probably come up with it. I pretty much throw it together, okay? I mean, I got kind of quantities. It's 2/3 oil and 1/3 wax. I throw some lemon oil in it so it makes it smell good, makes it a little bit more smooth, I guess, you know, and then melt it in a crock pot. And when it gets all completely melted, then I put the pumice in it, and then stir it till it starts to cool down. Then I just fill up my cream cheese dishes. Okay, so it's really not. And I'm going to have one of these for each lathe, so you can do your sanding and then your waxing. Okay. The other thing that I do, well, I got to find it. Okay. How many people use the Beal buffing system or have a buffer? When I say you have 3 different ones. You have the white diamond, you have the red rouge, and then you have wax, which is a stick of hard carnauba wax. This is the white diamond. This is what I end up putting on here. I don't take a buffer and buff it. I turn it up, put it on. This is after the wax. And this, I guess, is about the same as using your triple E, your hard finish wax. Now, you don't want to buff it real hard, but just enough to give it that shine. What was that?
See, that's a lot of work for a pen.
For a pen?
For you, yeah.
If you want it to look nice, it's not.
Well, yeah.
Now, I'm gonna do another pen at full speed. I mean, I'm doing a lot of talking here. In 5 or 6 minutes, I can do this whole process, okay? But I'm just showing you how I put it together. Now, this has got a crack in it, so we probably won't use that one. But anyway, that is then how I do a pen, okay? And a lot of, this is kind of an overstated thing, but this is how I make my pens. I don't care how you make yours, it don't make any difference. I'm just showing you how I make them and how fast they are for me to make. I don't make a pen. This is oak, by the way. It's hard. Let's get and go. I might add too that the fatter piece of wood that you start with, the longer it takes you to round it out. Now, if I'm going to make a whole bunch of pens and I get them all cut out and stuff, I'll actually cut them at a 1/2 inch rather than 3/4 of an inch. I cut them at a 1/2 inch squares. And that way, when you go to put them on there, boom. I mean, it takes about half that amount of time. So they don't have to big chunks of wood to put on there. Run them through the bandsaw and put 1/2 inch squares on them. And you'll find that the turning takes a lot less time. The first sanding paper here is 120, and that takes the longest because you want to get all the tool marks out of there. You want to get it smooth. Then the rest of them are easy. With the 120, again, I take the scratch marks out of it. Now you have to remember too, I'm not making a $65 pen, okay? And I'm not saying it's a lesser quality, I'm just saying that I don't take quite as much time with it. Sorry? Has it? I'm slow. Actually, I'm going to take a little bit more time. I have some shine juice mixed up, and I'll have this for also, I made, I think, 6 of these. It's 1/3 shellac, 1/3 minerals, one-third shellac, 1/3 boiled linseed oil, and 1/3 denatured alcohol. And I use the denatured alcohol mainly because the alcohol dries a lot faster than what mineral spirits does. I just took a drill and put a hole in the top of the bottle. And then when I get done, the plastic is laying there. I just take the cap off, put the plastic over it, and rebottle it up, or seal it up. Makes a great apple pudding. You can't pour it out. You have to be careful. The hole's a little bit too big. It runs out pretty good. Put 3 or 4 coats on it. It'll dry as you go. Turn it up, make it cure. And then I put the sanding wax on it. And this, they call this finishing the finish. Get the wax on it. Yeah, it gets hot. And this one, I'm not going to put the wax on it. I'm just going to put the buffing material on it. To me, it depends upon whether you got a really good finish and it needs a little bit more work, or how I feel, or whatever. But then you just, and this is real lightly. I'm not working this at all. I'm just going real lightly with the buffing wax. Pass them around.